To save a life, I've drunk 3-day-old urine of an elderly grandmother. That's just entry level to be a humanitarian aid worker. In actual fact, I was with a Tibetan medicine doctor high up in the Himalayas. He was using his taste buds as a diagnostic tool, and so was I. So I've been an international humanitarian aid worker for 20 years. It's been full of adventures and misadventures. I've been held hostage by a rebel army. I've had a gun at my face on 2 occasions. I've had my face slashed open with glass and had to sew it up myself. There was no medical aid available. And I've lived in war-torn countries where every single day I thought it was my last. But I've had the honor to work in the snowy high Himalayas, in the deserts of the Sahara, and in the jungles of the Amazon. I mostly work after major catastrophic disasters, so anything you can think of, mostly in third world countries in the last 20 years, I was there. Whether it was the Asian tsunami, the Pakistan earthquake, Nepal earthquake, Philippine typhoon, and on it goes. Currently, I'm in the Caribbean helping after Hurricane Irma and Maria. But there's certain times in our lives when we remember exactly where we were when an event took place. For me, it was when Princess Diana died, when the Twin Towers fell, and when the Asian tsunami happened back in 2004. I was in Tashkent in Uzbekistan, and I saw this disaster unfold. Waves 100 foot high, 230,000 dead, affecting 50 countries. And I had one thought, and one thought only, and that was, I must go. So I bought a one-way ticket from Tashkent to Phuket in Thailand. When I arrived there, I got into a taxi, and as I started to wend my way to the worst hit village, which was Ban Nam Kem, the scene got worse and worse. It looked like a nuclear bomb had gone off. Cars thrown on top of houses, resorts crumpled like matchboxes, glass and debris everywhere. And I could feel the panic rising. And I said to the taxi driver, "You have to stop." I thought, fresh air, have a walk. So I walked to the edge of the cliff, and I looked over, and I wished I hadn't. The sea was full of dead bodies. I came back from the edge of the cliff, and I collapsed, heart pounding, sweat trickling down my back. And I could only think, how quickly can I get out of this country? And as I sat there planning my escape, my nursing matron appeared in front of me, catapulted back to an 18-year-old girl. And she said, "Nurse, this is not about you. You are here to serve. You are here to contribute. You are here to make a difference." So I got back into the car and I headed to the survivors camp. 5,000 Thai people had been put into this camp. Now, my first career, I was a nurse, so I went straight to the first aid tent. Can you imagine being hit by a washing machine coming at 50 miles an hour? The injuries were terrible. And there was one day, this lady came up to me and with outstretched hands said, "Linda, please take my baby. I can no longer feed her." And I looked straight back into her eyes and I said, no, I will not take your baby and I will not feed her. Because I knew that was the slippery slope to dependency. But I did promise her that I would find a way that she could feed her own baby. So I went up to Bangkok and I asked the British ambassador to throw a party. And I wanted national and international business leaders. And I said to them, I've got a challenge for you. We have 5,000 Thai people. They're low educated. They can't relocate. They have lost everything, loved ones, homes, family members. And they need to earn money now. Who will come? Arms shot up. 4 came with me to the front line. They left their nice homes and their offices in Bangkok and entered a vastly different world. They sat with the survivors, they heard their stories, they felt their pain, and they looked and they questioned. They were the ultimate detectives. Their task was to find a way that these people could earn money now. They went back to Bangkok, and a week later, I got a call. Nervous and excited, I wondered what it would be. And they noticed that lining the coast where the wave hit still remained acres of rubber trees. And they'd done their research. This was viable for the next 10 years. So then I said, so what's the cost? And they said, well, it's very simple. We just need a coconut shell, a knife to scour the tree, and a rubber mangle. Total cost for 4 family uplift, $250 US. Within 4 months, they were earning 3 times the amount of money they ever earned in the hotel industry. It wasn't my idea. All I'd facilitated was people with different perspectives, different intelligence, to come together and understand the situation and find a solution. And there they are. But I've been very lucky. Throughout my career, I've had the most incredible mentors. Sir Richard Branson, the Dalai Lama. But I always have to mention Prince Charles, because it was his words that actually have made my whole career and the impact I've had so successful. He came to visit me in a refugee camp in Delhi. And as he sat and we chatted, I said, I am so excited to engage industry leaders, the private sector, to help solve problems and to be part of this whole making a difference. And he said, they will love to help you. And his advice was this: when they hear your passion and your excitement for change, they'll get out their checkbooks and write a big fat check. And he said, leave it on the table. Gave me a shock. Why would I do that? He said, because the most important thing is them. It's their skills, their business acumen, their intelligence, their heart, their empathy, their compassion. Money is for a moment. The person is for life. Probably the most challenging place I've ever worked is in Pakistan. I was there for 2 years. But as well as the challenges, it gave me the greatest joy. The people, as in most places, especially in the rural areas that I was working in, were the nicest, kindest people. So as soon as I arrived after the earthquake, a big 7.6 earthquake, I started to find out what the needs were But I'd only been there a heartbeat, and I was approached by the dairy industry. And they said, we cannot access enough milk. We know, and at the time, Pakistan was the 6th largest producer of milk in the world, but they couldn't access it. So I went out into the community and I looked around, and obviously the situation was this. There were single farmers with a single animal scattered throughout this huge area of rural Pakistan. So the industry leaders from Karachi said that they would come with me to these rural areas to see what they could do. But first of all, I had to do something. And it was a big lesson for me. As I said, I'd lived in Pakistan for 2 years, but I'd already been there 6 months before this project started. And I knew it was a conservative country, so I had long sleeves and long trousers. No flesh was being shown. But some of my Pakistani friends said to me, now is the time you have to wear a burqa. So a friend of mine took me to a burqa shop, which was quite an experience, being a tall, blonde lady. And I put it on and put all the hijab on, and I said, well, so how do I look? Is it okay? And this guy I'd known for 6 months, he looked at me and his jaw dropped. And he said, Linda, you are so beautiful. He didn't see me in my Western clothes. I didn't exist. So with my burqa on, wearing the moccasins or the R.M. Williams boots, I think I got it right this time, I'm in Australia, I then headed to these rural areas along with the industry leaders. And what unfolded was magical, because as they talked to the farmers and tried to understand their situation, immediately it was obvious we needed to create cooperatives. They also realized that the farmers had not been well educated on taking care of their animals. So they were tethered, 50 degrees heat. They couldn't drink any water when they wanted to. There was no shade. So all of these ideas were being written down and noted, how we could change that. And then the brilliant ones, which I'm sure many of you in the audience will know. But if you give a cow a cool shower an hour before it's milked, you get an extra litre of milk. So all of this knowledge share was going on. And then they realized what was the greatest need of the farmers? Cash. They had to pay for their doctors and nurses. For a teacher to come to these rural villages, they needed to pay the teacher. So the milk industry, they promised that every single day they would bring the tankers to the village, collect the milk, and hand over the cash to the farmers. This was one of those win-win moments that I will never forget, to see these Karachi business people sitting, having chai with these rural farmers, everyone happy and satisfied because they'd come, they'd seen, they'd talked, they'd listened. Using a similar model, I did a project for Sir Richard Branson in North Africa, in Morocco. And this, I don't know if anyone can recognize what's on the screen there, per ounce worth more than gold, saffron. And we were high up in the Atlas Mountains, and the same situation happened. We were talking to the farmers, talking to the business people, and then one of the elderly ladies noticed this crocus growing. Can you imagine now how sustainable this village is? I go back most years to see how it's going, and they have got a crop going. The ladies, the elderly, the girls, when it's crop season, it's about 20 days, and it's all hands on deck. Contribution is the greatest human need. We all like to give back. We all like to help other people. But it's hard. Our lives are very, very busy. And so when we're rushing to get a coffee at lunchtime and we hear the tin rattling, we might pop in a coin. We don't really know where it's going or what it's doing, but our guilt is assuaged. We feel okay about it. As I reflect on this, and I remember the projects I've run and the diverse people that I've brought together, as an aid worker who's a bridge between many communities, I knew that I had to create something much more dynamic, something that would suit busy people who have stressful lives, who maybe can hardly manage the mortgage, the school lunch, and their relationships. They don't have much time, and actually, would they do something if it's going to be depressing? No, they want it to be fun. So I have created something called the Race for Good. It is a competition. There are teams. Each team has the same critical issue to solve, either social or environmental. And the teams are full of the best, brightest brains, diversity, because the jewels come from multiple perspectives, different ways of looking at things. I love the mature brain, but I love the tension and the challenge that a young, unprogrammed brain brings. So always Race for Good. It's played over from 90 minutes over to 21 days. It's virtual. So I say to people, there's absolutely no excuses. You can play it at home from your armchair, having a cup of tea or a glass of wine. And I've run this now for the last 6 years. Just before Christmas, I had a call from Richard Branson, would I run one on Necker Island? Now, he always has fascinating guests, as you can imagine. And this time, he had future astronauts staying on the island, Olympic athletes, and also entrepreneurs. Now, Hurricane Maria and Irma hit the Caribbean in a very, very, very big way. It was a Category 5. And one of the islands close to Necker is called Virgin Gorda, and it is smashed to smithereens. When I was there before Christmas, it's still 18 months after that hurricane hit. And so the problem that was identified that was the most critical was the youth. Crime was going up. The use of drugs was going up. Underage pregnancies were going up. Why? Only half-day schooling, the schools smashed. Nothing for the young people to do. All the sporting activities, the basketball, the volleyball, gone. So what does a teenager do? So this was the critical issue that 4 teams were given. Richard Branson was trying to insist on being on a team, and I told him no. He had to be the judge. So in each team, we had students who were being affected by this. We had teachers, we had elders, we had the Necker guests. And in each team, these diverse teams, they competed against each other. The solutions are being implemented as we speak. Hydroponic farming is being the top one. You can't believe that even an island like Virgin Gorda does not grow enough vegetables. So a new way has been brought in. But this is what is so exciting about Race for Good. It takes all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life and really challenges people to get to the bottom of a problem. Life is complicated, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I know. My first career, I was a nurse. Then I became a single mom very early on in my career and had to give up the job I loved. And I took a job for money. I hated it. Every single day I would come home from work and I would cry myself to sleep. I would drink that extra bottle of wine and I would just say, "Get on with it, girl, you're taking care of your children." But life does catch up with you, doesn't it? And one day I was driving home after a sales conference and I had the most terrible stabbing pain behind my eyes. And I went blind. Luckily, I didn't kill myself, and my sight came back. But these wake-up calls remind us of what we are, who we are, our differences, our uniqueness, and what we bring to life every single day. And I really am big on activities that communities can come together for resilience. So I'm always working in disaster areas. This is actually in the Philippines after Typhoon Haiyan, and this is a basketball team. I think they wanted to win, that's why they chose my name for their shirts. But they all came together as a group, as a community. When you're either busy like we are, or if you've had your whole life smashed as they have, you need things to bring yourself together as a community. And sport is usually something that's very, very high up on the list. So I just want to remind you of something, because we all have such busy lives. Try and remember the things, to do the things you really love to do. Prioritize yourself sometimes, because it makes you stronger and more resilient. And we are not all the same. I love this slide. Honor and value your differences. That's exactly what we're doing all the time with Race for Good. And I really want to challenge you. I want you to know, think about the skills you have, communications, accountancy, farmers. What is the burning issue in your community that you can't tolerate hearing about anymore? You can create your own Race for Good and solve a problem. And a little sneak preview, I think we may be doing one very soon with Rabobank. But just in summary, remember Prince Charles's word. It's never about money. It's about us. It's our knowledge, our sharing, our compassion that makes the difference. Think back to the Burqa story. Sometimes we need to even change what we look like for someone to be able to hear us. All of these choices in life are ours. We can choose to care. We can choose to be the change. Together, we are growing a better world. Don't look for heroes, be one. How do you want to be remembered?